CEO Ethan Carter had my glands removed to save his beloved Omega. He said I owed him. My son threw a fit, insisting he wanted that Omega to be his new dad. In the middle of the night, he sneaked to my hospital bed and injected air into my Roman 4 line. There's no need to be that hasty, I'll be dead soon. I asked the system when I could leave this world. The system now, 6 years ago. If I hadn't accidentally entered Ethan Carter's room during a business trip, he and Uncle Leo would have gotten engaged. I still remember in the latter half of that absurd night, the way Uncle Leo looked at me when he burst in with his people, furious, disgusted, as if I were something filthy. Ethan's teeth were still sunk into the back of my neck. I tried to flee, but he caught me by the waist and dragged me back. He permanently marked me, and my whole body reeked with the explosive scent of oncoming heat pheromones. Uncle Leo pinched his nose and had his men yank me off the bed, then dumped a bucket of cold water over my head. They had a huge fight. I left in disgrace, cut the trip short, and returned to the orphanage. 3 months later, I collapsed from a severe lack of matched pheromones and was hospitalized. That was when Grandma Carter appeared, and when I learned I was pregnant. Because I had no parents, I especially longed for family of my own, so I kept the baby, also because I had no choice. Grandma Carter brought me into the Carter family estate. Uncle Leo left the country. Ethan believed I had stolen what was meant for Leo, so he punished me. As soon as Cole was born, Ethan dumped him on Grandma Carter and I became Ethan's plaything. He would force me into heat whenever he pleased, watching coldly as I clung to him, begging and sobbing in disgrace. Because of the permanent mark, I was bound to his pheromones for life. I resisted and I ran, but if I went too long without his pheromones, I would lose my mind, splitting headaches, vomiting, a fever that never broke. Even brushing bare skin against silk sheets felt like being slashed by knives. My Omega instincts made me obey him and seek him. I could not abandon him. I pinned all my hopes on Cole. But he wouldn't come close to me. He grew up under Grandma Carter's care with private tutors and a regimented upbringing. Every time I wanted to see him, I had to exhaust myself finding new ways to please Ethan. Cole would cling to Ethan and ask him to read English picture books. When I read, he said my pronunciation was wrong. The drawings I made for him would show up in the trash in no time. The robot Ethan bought on a whim stayed by Cole's pillow. The homemade cookies I baked were fed to the dog. His water pellet gun fired only at me and it hurt. He was the lion on my fur collar, the mud on my pant leg. He called me hey. Only when Ethan reminded him would he grudgingly call me dad. I kept telling myself he was too young, easy to sway, and that it would get better when he grew older. I waited and waited until he turned 5. Half a year ago, Uncle Leo returned to the country. Ethan lit the whole city with fireworks for him. Leo began appearing at the Carter estate again and again, always side by side with Ethan. Having recovered what he'd lost, Ethan showered Leo with care, his gaze soft and deeply affectionate. Cole adored Leo. In his eyes, Leo came from a prestigious family, bright, open, elegant, well-spoken, far more suitable for his father than I was. The three of them grew closer by the day, and my position in the Carter estate became ever more awkward. Ethan's pheromones matched mine too well, so my dependency was especially severe. After more than half a month without contact, I started getting sick on and off again. I was so ill I couldn't get out of bed. That day, Ethan took Cole to Leo's art exhibition. The servants looked down on me. I asked for water, no one answered, so I braced myself and dragged my body up from the bed. In the end, I collapsed to the ground. My heart was racing, my hands and feet were cold, and I thought I was about to die. In desperation, I dialed Ethan Carter's number and begged for help. He was indifferent, saying he had more important things to do and couldn't be at my beck and call. I heard Cole on the other end talking to Uncle Leo. He pretended. But I knew he was jealous of Uncle Leo. He said, "Let him die from his illness. I want Uncle Leo to be my new dad." At that moment, my heart turned to ashes. That day, Ethan still came back. The next day, as soon as I had barely recovered, something like a cannonball came charging through the door and knocked me onto the bed. Cole straddled my waist, yanking my hair, scratching my face, cursing me over and over. "You filthy thing, you worthless piece of trash. You made Uncle Leo cry." I stared at the little monster on top of me, and only then did I truly realize that half of the blood flowing in his veins belonged to Ethan Carter and the other half belonged to Ethan Carter too. I swung my arm and shoved him off me. He hadn't expected me to fight back. With a thud, he tumbled across the floor like a gourd, probably hurt and certainly embarrassed. His lips trembled, his eyes reddened. The servants, who had been nowhere in sight when I was being beaten, suddenly rushed in, fussing over him, their words full of blame for my cruelty. I didn't try to comfort him, I just sat with a cold, detached face. Seeing that, Cole tried to lunge at me again, screaming, I'll kill you, you worthless hick, you lowlife who used your body to climb up. Because of you I can't hold my head up in front of my friends. You ruined me, you're not my dad." His eyes were full of hatred. These were clearly his true feelings. I didn't know who had taught him, or when he had started to think this way. I thought it would pierce my heart, but strangely my chest felt utterly quiet. Just as things were about to spiral out of control, Ethan returned. He picked Cole up and told him to stop messing around. Cole obeyed him and burst into loud sobs. Later I heard that Uncle Leo had taken Cole away from the Carter estate for a few days to comfort him. How many days exactly? I didn't care. Their bond as father and son had nothing to do with me anymore. Not long after, Uncle Leo suddenly fell ill with a rare, acute disorder. His glands began to fail. Grandma Carter took me to the hospital. I saw Leo lying on the bed, clutching Ethan's hand, weeping in fear that he would never be able to have children. Cole clung to Leo's waist, crying with him. Ethan announced he would have my glands transplanted into Leo. I looked at Grandma Carter, still smiling beside me. By the time I realized it, they had already made their decision. I calmly told Ethan what such a decision would mean. Losing my glands, I would face more than 10 permanent complications. My hormone levels would crash, leaving me mentally unstable. I would weaken rapidly, spend the rest of my life on medication, and I wouldn't live past 50. Ethan seemed to have prepared his answer long before. He quickly replied, "This is what you owe Leo." I wasn't surprised he would think that way. Look at him in his tailored suit, tall and handsome, with striking features, dazzling family background, standing at the pinnacle of power. Even when he pinned my hands, pressed the back of my neck, and slammed me against the door, he had seized me so viciously, as if taking me by force was his right. To have him was to owe the entire world a debt. Fine, I agreed, because the Carter family hadn't asked for my opinion, they had only informed me. And also because I was already exhausted by this cursed permanent mark. Ethan hadn't expected me to give in so easily. The words he had prepared went unused. He blinked a few times, the ice-carved mask of his face softening just a little, and deigned to explain. "Leo and I aren't what you think. I promised I would take care of him until he found his own alpha. You already have Cole. Leo needs this gland. I'll make it up to you. With how advanced medical care is now, it won't affect you much." He even sounded sincere, going so far as to pat my hand. That very night he sent me into the operating room. How ironic, my glands had just been removed when the report came back that Leo's illness had been a misdiagnosis. As the anesthesia faded over the next few hours, I couldn't stop wondering why everything that happened to me was so absurd, so illogical. Only when the system appeared did I finally get an answer. The world I lived in was an ABO novel with 2 male leads, full of torment, and I was the unlucky extra who had stumbled in and been forgotten. My whole existence was just to suffer. The system said that to make up for its mistake, it was willing to use points to restore my health or send me out of this world. "Send me away," I said. "Don't you want to think about it?" the system asked. It told me my body belonged here. Once I left, the body on the hospital bed would be left with nothing but autonomous breathing, weakening bit by bit until it died. It advised me to stay a while longer and say my goodbyes properly. Half conscious, I opened my eyes and saw Cole standing at my bedside with a syringe, secretly injecting air into my Roman 4 tube. He was so eager to make room for his new dad. Fine, let them have Uncle Leo. I asked the system when I could leave this world. Now, it said, my soul slowly separated from my body. For the first time, I could stand aside and look at myself lying on the bed, pale, fragile, a ruined Omega with dark circles under my eyes, lips cracked and dry, yet still carrying the trace of once delicate beauty. Like a mountain plum blossom withering on the branch, embodying every trait of someone made to be broken. I gave her away along with my complete withering, hoping that next time we might meet spring. The host has departed. Then I was pulled, twisted, into a spiraling black tunnel. Before dissolving completely, I caught one last blurry glimpse. Ethan Carter and the surgeon who had operated on me stood outside in the dim hallway discussing the fate of my glands. The bleak light drained their figures of color, like a black and white film that I could no longer enter. The doctor looked troubled. Removing a gland is like tearing a tree out by the roots. Even if you put it back in the soil, it will still wither. For the first time, a flicker of guilt crossed Ethan's face. "We'll talk when she wakes," he said. I wanted to laugh bitterly, but it no longer mattered. Then Ethan suddenly looked in my direction as if sensing me and called out, "Wendy." As his voice fell, everything before my eyes scattered like dust. I sank into darkness. I don't know how long passed before I finally woke. I found myself lying in a simply furnished apartment. A hand was resting on my stomach. I turned my head and saw a man asleep beside me, completely bare. His shoulders were broad, his chest solid, but his features were almost delicate, fair skin, long thick eyelashes, a tear mole under his eye. I couldn't remember who he was, and for a moment I just stared in a daze. Then the man woke, sat up, rubbed his eyes, and smiled at me innocently. As the blanket slipped from his body, it revealed a frame covered in marks. I was utterly stunned. I jumped up immediately and ran straight into the bathroom. "System, what's going on?" I stopped halfway through the sentence. When I lifted my head, I saw my true reflection in the mirror above the sink. My features weren't much different from the ABO world, but without a secondary gender, the effect was different. The person in the mirror was just an ordinary young man with somewhat delicate features, but my build wasn't slender, and my skin was even a little rough. Then everything came back to me. My identity in the real world wasn't so different from the ABO one. I was a painter who had lost both parents early. I had been diagnosed with ALS. When I realized my finger muscles were wasting away, trembling so badly that I couldn't even hold a pen, I quickly used all my years of savings. I moved into this apartment I had admired for so long but could never bear to buy, then spent the rest on travel, living recklessly. When I came back, I wrote my will. Then I went to a bar. I thought about how I had never even had my first time, so I got drunk, acted crazy, and dragged home the best-looking man I saw. But in truth that night I did nothing but drunkenly scribble paint all over his body. When I sobered up in the middle of the night, I put a card beside the sleeping man as compensation and left. Then I swallowed 200 sleeping pills to end it all. Of course, I didn't succeed. System offered me a chance to live by completing world-hopping missions. I'm here, host, what do you want to ask? How's my illness? It's gone. I looked down at my hands, they were warm and flexible, glowing with health. My eyes grew hot. I slipped quietly out of the bathroom, ready to send away the man in my bed. After what I had endured with Ethan Carter, I had no intention of forming any intimate relationship with anyone again. At least not anytime soon. Not even physically. The man was getting dressed. If you're fine, I'll head home, he said casually. What? I froze. You were drunk, acting wild. I took care of you all night. Now I need to get back and catch up on sleep. That's all. His gaze was honest, without a trace of deceit. I felt ashamed for doubting him. Before leaving, he pointed at a cactus painting hanging in my living room and asked sincerely, "Is this for sale? You like it?" My son Mason likes it. I want to bring it home to show him. Mason. The name jolted my memory. This man was Preston. Back when I decided to end my life, I had been so lost in a fog that I paid no attention to the people around me. Preston was the original owner of this apartment. He was said to be unmarried. Mason was his child. He had sold the place to me and now lived in the unit next door, my neighbor. I didn't know if I should feel mortified or relieved that I'd never even asked his name. I quickly handed him the painting. Take it. Thank you for everything. If you ever need something, just ask. I owe you. I said that, but when Preston immediately replied, "Then can I ask you for a favor?" I was caught off guard. He explained he wanted to find an art tutor for Mason. Since we lived so close, he hoped Mason could take lessons at my place. The words had already left my mouth, so I couldn't very well refuse, but I really wasn't comfortable around children anymore. Still, seeing Preston's eyelashes lower, his face showing clear disappointment, I couldn't bring myself to say no. Mason isn't easy to teach, he admitted softly. No one wants to take him, otherwise I wouldn't trouble you, so I agreed. The system suddenly sighed in my head. I'd love to recruit him as a capture target, but it only said that one line. Then seeing that my health had stabilized, it left to guide a new host. Before it departed, it asked if I wanted live updates on the Carter family. I refused. I didn't want them disturbing my peace. I began readjusting to the world that had always been mine. I reached out to my old teachers and friends, returned to familiar studios to train my skills again, and found dealers to sell my paintings. I had no choice. After all my reckless spending, my wallet was almost empty. The rest of my time went into tutoring Mason. And yes, Mason was indeed difficult to teach. Mason was strong-willed and didn't have much talent for art. When I taught him how to use dots, lines, and shapes, he only wanted to scribble circles and often added turtles on top. I never forced him. Instead, I sat with him and drew eggs side by side, slipping bits of art knowledge into the process. He liked that very much. Preston would sit nearby while Mason took lessons, sometimes with a sketchbook of his own. Just like Mason, he only drew what he felt like, mostly faces, crooked and clumsy. Sometimes, when I saw his scratchy lines, I couldn't help but reach out and correct his grip on the pencil. The more I taught him, the worse his drawing seemed to get, but all he ever did was give me an embarrassed smile. Little by little, I grew familiar with both of them. Mason started getting comfortable enough to act spoiled around me. He would sprawl across my lap, tilt his chin up, and look at me with wide, shining eyes. "Wendy, can I call you Uncle Goo?" he asked. "Uncle Goo, you draw so well. I want to see if mine looks good too." For a second, I could almost imagine a wagging tail behind him. I rubbed my eyes, stuffed the brush back into his hand, and let him keep drawing his turtles while whining. Preston would slice fruit and bring it over, scolding Mason while feeding him at the same time. Sometimes he would even casually offer me a piece too. That spoiled little child began to fill a hidden emptiness in me I hadn't even realized was there. By the 20th lesson, it was pouring rain. Mason was late, and I thought they wouldn't come at all until there was a knock at the door. I opened it and found Preston standing there, soaked to the bone. Seen this way, his tall build, broad shoulders, and narrow waist were striking, and under his translucent shirt I could glimpse the lines of his chest. His face was paler than usual, flushed from the cold, and rainwater clung to his lashes. The mole beneath his eye stood out even more. He lowered his gaze to me, and I almost slammed the door shut. "What's wrong?" I asked, my ears burning. I didn't know where to look. Up seemed rude, down seemed even ruder. "I forgot my umbrella. And my keys," Preston said hoarsely, his voice thick with congestion. "The keys are with Mason. He went to his grandmother's. Before he gets back, could I borrow your bathroom to take a shower?" My instinct told me letting him in wasn't a good idea. But before I could think more than a second or two, Preston hugged himself tightly and sneezed loud and harsh. I had no choice but to step aside. He murmured several apologies, head bowed, dripping water as he hurried into the bathroom. The sound of the shower started. I stayed in the living room uneasy, then went to my bedroom to find something clean he could wear. Just as I found a pair of pants that might fit him, I heard a heavy thud from the bathroom, then silence. Alarmed, I rushed in and saw him collapsed flat on the floor, already unconscious. His body was flushed all over, shoulders broad, waist narrow, long legs stretched out. I bent down quickly to lift him, and as soon as I did, my hand brushed his burning chest. My whole body stiffened, my heart racing wildly. Something felt wrong. A terrible thought struck me. Was Preston trying to seduce me? I couldn't rely on pheromones to judge anymore, but the atmosphere was far too ambiguous. His full weight sagged against me. Shoving the thought away, I grabbed a towel, wrapped it roughly around him, and hauled him to the sofa. I reached for my phone to dial 911, but Preston caught my wrist and yanked me down. His dazed eyes locked on me and his broad chest pressed firmly against mine. My entire body froze, my heart pounding out of control. He pulled me closer, his voice faint, trembling, calling my name. Wendy. He buried his head into the crook of my neck, rubbing against me so insistently that I trembled. His breath grew hotter, drawing closer and closer to my lips. Then Mason's voice rang out from outside the door, shattering the haze in an instant. I shoved Preston away, my ears burning, and hurried to let Mason in. Mason burst inside with the keys and a change of clothes, immediately scolding Preston with fiery indignation. "What were you thinking? If it's raining, just wait for me. What if you caught a cold?" Preston was still slumped in the same position where I had pushed him, completely unresponsive. Something felt wrong. I reached out and touched his forehead, only to jerk back at the burning heat. He really was sick. The result of his fever was that both of them ended up staying at my place. I gave Preston medicine, cooked porridge for Mason, and afraid of spreading the illness, arranged for the two of them to sleep separately, Preston in the master bedroom, Mason in the guest room. At Mason's request, I even told him a bedtime story. Just as I turned off the light, he suddenly leapt up, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Good night, Uncle Goo." I froze, unable to make any expression at all. Mason's face grew visibly panicked until I realized my eyes had grown red. "Uncle Goo, what's wrong? I'm sorry. Are you really sad? You're not going to kill yourself, are you?" His words stunned me. I wiped at the corners of my eyes and asked him what he meant. Mason confessed, "Dad said you always sit on the balcony staring off. Like something's wrong. He kept an eye on you for days. When he ran into you at the bar, you had a fruit knife and wanted to cut your wrist. He said you need more company." I stared at Mason in shock. He grew nervous, tugging at the hem of his clothes. "Don't be scared, we're not bad people." Moved, I shook my head. "No, I should thank you. I had once been left broken by hospitals, abandoned when I was gravely ill, but in 6 years, the only ones who had truly cared for me were complete strangers." After tucking Mason in, I wandered back to the master bedroom in a daze. I sat by Preston's bedside, watching his unconscious face, ashamed that I had ever suspected he wanted to seduce me. My heart was full of thoughts too tangled to voice, and before I knew it, my cheeks were wet. From that day on, I instinctively began to think of the two of them as my new family. We went on picnics together. I gave them paintings. We visited art exhibitions as a trio. Later, at one exhibition, I ran into a long-lost teacher who introduced me to several well-known figures in the art world. Under their guidance, I decided to prepare for my own solo show. My life, once stagnant, began flowing again like water. Everything seemed to be turning for the better. Until the day I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, someone grabbed me tightly in an embrace, over his shoulder. I saw Cole and I froze in surprise. Ethan Carter held me close, his nose pressed against my neck, instinctively trying to breathe in my scent. But almost immediately, his body stiffened. He felt the difference, realized my skin and scent weren't the same. Ethan let go and stepped back, staring at me. I stared at them in return. He seemed thinner. The suit that once fit him perfectly now hung loose. His cheeks were hollow, his sharp eyes dulled by shadows, the brilliance gone. Without the influence of pheromones, I saw clearly that his looks and aura weren't nearly as exceptional as I'd once thought. Cole turned his face aside, wearing that arrogant expression of someone waiting to be coaxed, refusing to meet my eyes. He clutched a gift wrapped in colored paper, the wrapping already torn. And then I realized something startling. I hadn't thought about them at all, not once since I left. The loves and hates of the Carter estate felt like another lifetime. Now looking at them, I felt nothing. Perhaps I had changed too much. Ethan didn't dare speak right away, but he kept his gaze fixed on my face. Ethan tested my reaction by calling softly, "Wendy." He had mistaken me, but I slammed the door in his face. I didn't know how they had found me. In my head, I tried to call on the system for answers, but it didn't respond. At dinner, Preston and Mason were eating at my table. Preston noticed me still standing frozen by the door and walked over, bowl in hand. "Wendy, who was that?" "Don't know them, doesn't matter," I said flatly, but almost immediately the knocking started again, louder this time, urgent, relentless. Preston glanced at me, then reached out and pulled the door open. Ethan was standing even closer than before, and now he had forced a smile onto his face. But when his eyes lifted and fell on Preston, his expression shifted sharply. "Who is he?" I frowned, silent. I didn't feel any obligation to explain. Ethan noticed the bowl in Preston's hand, and rage flashed in his eyes. "I struggled so hard to see you, and you found yourself a new man." Cole spotted Preston and me too, blurting out in disbelief, "Dad." Those two words carried too much weight. Preston almost dropped the bowl in his hands. Mason, hearing the commotion, bolted out from the living room, wedging his head between us. What, Dad?" I sighed and patted his head. "I don't know them." Cole stomped his foot in fury. "You gave birth to me. How could a man have a child?" "I told you, you've got the wrong person," I said again, already pushing the door closed. Go bother someone else. But Ethan grabbed my arm in a panic. Wendy, I can explain. Preston shoved his hand away. Sir, show some respect. Ethan, never known for his temper, seized Preston by the collar ready to lash out, but Preston's eyes hardened and he refused to back down an inch. Mason screamed and lunged forward, biting down on Ethan's leg. Cole dropped his gift box and tried to pull Mason off, only to have his hair yanked in return. The air grew tense, about to snap. I snapped first, my foot shot out, kicking Ethan hard enough to knock him to his knees with a heavy thud. Then I dragged Mason back, pulled Cole off him and slammed the door shut behind them. Swift, clean, without hesitation. From outside came Ethan's furious voice. Wendy, what are you doing? Cole was shouting too. Dad, I told you you've got the wrong person, leave. I shouted back, exasperated, but Ethan was relentless. If you don't open this door today, I'm not leaving. Fine. I pulled out my phone and called the police. Maybe in that old world of abuse there hadn't been police, but here there were. When the officers hauled Ethan away, his face was twisted with disbelief. He glared venomously at Preston. You'd better watch yourself. Then they shoved him out. Cole stood frozen, stunned. His eyes were red as he shot me one last look, then ran after Ethan. When they were gone, I turned to send Preston and Mason home, but caught them exchanging looks. I understood it must have been confusing, overwhelming for them, but still a pang of regret hit me. I really wished we could keep living just like this, the way we had been. They seemed to reach an unspoken agreement almost immediately. Wendy, walk us home, Preston said. Mason, cheerful as ever, threw himself into my arms. I grabbed my keys, took his little hand, and walked out with them. From building A to building B was only a 3-minute walk. Preston's demeanor hadn't changed. He chatted easily about Mason's classes and upcoming art exhibitions. Mason, on the other hand, was straightforward. Just as we reached the building entrance, he tugged at my arm. Wendy, that boy really is your son, isn't he? He looks so much like you. Does he? I forced a crooked smile. Back at the Carter estate, Grandma Carter and all the servants used to say Cole and Ethan looked like 2 peas in a pod, as if that could erase the trace of me in his blood. Cole took pride in it too. No one had ever said he looked like me. I was lost in thought when suddenly my nose bumped straight into Preston's back. I lifted my head and saw that Preston had stopped walking too. 4 eyes met mine, filled with words left unspoken. I sighed and said, if I tell you, you probably won't believe me. You know about ABO, about a world-traveling system. I tried my best to explain everything clearly to Preston and Mason. When I finished, Mason's mouth hung open wide enough to fit an egg. Preston, on the other hand, was calmer. He seemed to take it all in stride. So you mean the body you're in now isn't the same one as before? You could put it that way. Then is it fair to say everything you went through could be treated as just a dream? A dream? Preston gave a small smile. I've had terrible dreams too, like jumping off a cliff and shattering into pieces. But when I woke, nothing had happened. I even grew taller afterward. His way of comforting someone was certainly unique. I felt some of the tension leave me. I patted his shoulder. Still, be careful these days. Ethan thinks you're his rival. He might try to come after you. Preston gently lifted my hand off his shoulder, only to hold it lightly instead. His eyes met mine, deep, steady, as if moonlight had been poured into them. His voice was low, calm, and certain. He's not mistaken. I am his rival. The words struck me like a clap of thunder. My mind went blank. So you like me? But aren't you straight? I thought you were straight. I tried to seduce you so many times and you never reacted. The night you brought me home from the bar, all you did was let me scrawl nonsense across your body. Moonlight filtered through the trees, shadows swaying. No one spoke. All I could hear were the faint sounds of insects, the rustle of grass in the breeze, and a heartbeat from somewhere, his or mine, I couldn't tell. In that moment I suddenly realized how handsome Preston was. The gentle tilt of his eyes, the faint beauty marked by his lashes, even the curve of his ears, all of it striking beneath the fluid glow of moonlight. The light traced down from his straight nose to his thin lips, and the line of his mouth tensed ever so slightly, as if a single breath could conjure a mirage between us. Something stirred in me. And when I realized that this feeling had nothing to do with pheromones, I wanted desperately to keep hold of it. But Preston had a daughter. For me, that wasn't an easy choice. I pulled my hand back. This can't happen. I don't know if what I feel for you is just misplaced affection. His lips fell, lashes lowering as he whispered, I shouldn't have chosen this moment. I just couldn't hold it in. We fell silent. Then Mason, who had been listening quietly all along, suddenly piped up. Wendy, give my uncle a chance. He's never chased anyone before and he tries so hard every day just to be close to you. I was stunned. Uncle. My parents are gone. It's my uncle who raised me, Mason explained, his tone deliberately light, though the droop of his mouth betrayed the loneliness underneath. But he quickly brightened again. I thought my uncle never dated because of me. Turns out he just hadn't met someone he liked. Now he has. He grinned, grabbing my hand and then Preston's. If you marry my uncle, you'll get me too. 2 for 1. Think about it. I was left speechless, glancing at Preston. He gave me a pitiful look and said softly, you don't have to decide now. I just want you to know I've always been here behind you. I'll wait. His sincerity left me unsettled, so much so that even late into the night I couldn't stop picturing the shy, awkward way he'd looked at me. After months of silence, the system finally returned, striding in brashly while my mind was wandering. Hey, it greeted me. I jumped in surprise. System. I heard Ethan and Cole showed up together. What's going on? See for yourself. The moment the words fell, an image of a hospital room appeared before my eyes. Inside the vision, I saw myself lying calmly in a hospital bed, an oxygen mask over my face. Judging from the clothes and the bandages over my wounds, it was shortly after my glands had been removed. Ethan Carter sat by my bedside, staring at me without blinking, lost in thought. My fingers twitched suddenly. Ethan sat up straight at once, leaning forward, his face full of unease, but there was no further movement, making it seem as if he had imagined it. He sat back down again, releasing a breath so faint it was almost invisible. I knew why. He wanted me to wake, but he was afraid of it too. He knew exactly what I had suffered. Not long after, Uncle Leo arrived, looking apologetic. Ethan, you should go rest. This is my fault. I didn't check my condition properly, and Ethan's facial muscles shifted strangely, but unlike before, he didn't tell Leo, it's not your fault. Silence made things awkward, and Leo quickly added, when Wendy wakes, I'll apologize to him, but you've been here 2 days straight. If you collapse, how can you take care of him later? Ethan let himself be persuaded. He rose slowly from the chair, unsteady on his feet after sitting so long. Leo rushed to support him, and Ethan didn't push him away. Stumbling slightly, he followed Leo toward the door. Just before leaving, Leo glanced back at me, the corners of his lips curving into a thin, mocking smile. The vision shifted. Ethan had changed into a fresh suit, standing before my bed with a heavy expression. Why hasn't he woken up yet? He demanded. On the bed I lay still with my eyes closed, visibly thinner, the bones on the back of my hand jutting sharply beneath my skin. Leo, Grandma Carter, and Cole were all there. Cole seemed unable to face the sight of me. Clutching Grandma's clothes and hiding behind her, Ethan turned on the doctor beside him. He's been unconscious for 7 days. Why hasn't he woken up? The doctor, calm and firm, answered, Mr. Carter, before the surgery we told you about the risks. You read the consent forms yourself. Anesthesia, accidents, surgical, bleeding, infection, complications. We explained all of it and you signed. Those words cut deep. Ethan let go of the doctor's collar and collapsed into the chair, trembling. He reached for my hand, staring at the bones beneath the skin as he rubbed them absent-mindedly. Grandma Carter spoke up to defend the doctor. No one wanted this to happen. Ask instead what treatment options there are and whether there's hope for recovery. The doctor adjusted his collar and replied truthfully, the patient's body is extremely weak, and he seems to lack any will to live. I fear he may stay like this permanently. Ethan snapped back to attention. Stay like this, what do you mean? A vegetative state, the doctor said. Cole froze, panic flashing in his eyes. He turned to look at Uncle Leo and caught the uncontrollable curl at the corner of Leo's mouth. Ethan shot to his feet, teeth clenched. I remember after the surgery you told me he would wake up soon, but since that day his condition only got worse. Why? He ordered surveillance footage to be checked. Seeing that, I closed my eyes in the vision. I already knew what was about to be revealed. In the hospital hallway, Ethan exploded. He kicked Cole hard, sending him sprawling across the floor. Yanking off his belt, he whipped him mercilessly. Ungrateful little beast, he's your father and you wanted him dead. Cole scrambled, crawling frantically across the floor, wailing like a wounded animal. Grandma Carter and Uncle Leo hovered nearby, shouting half-hearted protests. Why are you hitting him? But their bodies edged farther away, deliberately keeping their distance. The nurses, afraid of being caught up in it, rushed over when they saw what was happening and tore Ethan Carter's belt from his hands. Deprived of his weapon, Ethan simply grabbed Cole by one arm and slapped him hard across the face 3 times. Cole's cheeks swelled instantly, red and grotesque. I'll tell you this, Ethan snarled, your father's gone and you'll never be a Carter again. That broke Cole completely. He screamed, voice cracking, stop pretending you're the good ones. You all knew I wanted Uncle Leo as my new dad. Isn't that what you wanted too? At his words, everyone's faces changed. Leo shot a panicked look toward Grandma Carter, who pressed a hand to her forehead as if her head ached from anger. Ethan's face darkened and he lunged to seize Cole again. Cole bolted 8 feet away, ducking behind a nurse, shrieking at the top of his lungs. You were the ones who told me he was just a filthy Omega trash. You said no matter what I did to him, it didn't matter. It was Leo who faked his illness, you who ripped out his glands, Grandma who taught me to pump air into his Roman 4. So why am I the only one getting beaten? Ethan took a step forward to chase him, then suddenly clutched his chest and fell to his knees, breath hitching violently as if the pain were unbearable. The vision began to flicker and shift. Ethan was sitting by my bedside again, holding my skeletal hand, his face gaunt with exhaustion. Then I was covered with a white sheet and wheeled into the morgue. Then Ethan was drunk in a bar, reeking of liquor, while Leo staggered and shabby and unkempt, only to be shoved away. Ethan's face twisted with rage as he gripped a steering wheel. Cole sat in the backseat, clutching a brightly wrapped gift, asking nervously where they were going to find Dad. The car plunged into the sea. The image cut off. The system's voice followed. We were afraid that world would collapse, so we sent the father and son here. You see, they both love you deeply, they just don't realize it. I laughed bitterly. Doesn't look that way to me. They regret everything now, the system insisted. Why not give them a chance? You could have a perfect ending and earn generous task rewards. I refused and told the system something instead. On my third day back in this world, I went shopping at a nearby department store. In the restroom while washing my hands, a tall man with a citrus scent walked in. My first reaction was to pinch my nose and glance around for anyone else, ready to warn him not to release his pheromones so inappropriately. But the man only looked embarrassed, sniffed his sleeve, and asked if it was too strong. His girlfriend had sprayed him with her perfume as a joke. That was when I realized. In this world there were no pheromones, no alphas or omegas, no preheat cycles, no heats, no marks. I wouldn't have my entire life derailed by a single accident. I wouldn't be forced by instinct into anyone's possession. I could breathe freely. Do you know how I reacted? I asked the system. Right in front of that man I squatted down and sobbed so hard it scared him out of the restroom. I understand, the system said at last, and just like that it disappeared again, silent as it had once appeared, no longer trying to push me back to Ethan. As for Ethan and Cole, now that they had come into this world, they could never reclaim the privileges of the Carter name. I didn't know how they got out of the detention center, but the next day they tried again to get into my neighborhood. I had already asked the gate guard to keep them out. When I returned from breakfast, I saw the guard standing firm while the two of them, still in the same rumpled clothes from the night before, stood outside looking utterly defeated. The guard shook his head at them with a click of his tongue. The guard scolded Ethan Carter for wasting his time hanging around instead of working or letting his child go to school. "Why come here just to embarrass yourself?" he muttered. I silently agreed. Cole, however, couldn't bear such words from someone he considered beneath him. Furious, he lunged at the guard, ready to hit him, but Ethan caught him and held him back. In the middle of the struggle, Cole spotted me. He immediately slid down from his father's arms, bit his lip in grievance, and whispered, "Dad, take me and father home, it's so cold out here." I ignored him and told the guard to open the gate for me. Cole's face flushed red with anger, and just as he was about to shout something, a loud growl rumbled from his stomach. I turned at the sound. He was staring straight at me, clutching a paper bag of pork buns in his hand. Ethan noticed too and said, "Wendy, I know you're harsh in words but soft at heart. These buns." I plucked the bag from Cole's hand and gave it a little shake. His eyes lit up instantly. But then I tossed it outside the guardhouse. A scrappy little mutt bounded out, barking and wagging its tail, tore open the bag and devoured the steaming buns. "For the dog," I said. Ethan and Cole's faces both darkened. I turned to head inside, but Ethan grabbed my arm. "Wendy, no matter how angry you are, Cole is still your son. How can you just watch him go hungry?" I shook him off and brushed the dust from my sleeve. "He's your son. He has nothing to do with me." With that, I left them behind and stepped into the gate. "Dad, how can you treat me like this? Then I won't give you my gift." Cole shouted after me. I turned and saw him tearing open some colored wrapping paper. Inside was a drawing, the one I'd made for him back at the Carter estate, the one he had once tossed away. He wanted to show me he had kept it, that maybe he hadn't hated me as much as he pretended. But I didn't care anymore. "Throw it in the trash," I said. Perhaps I had underestimated Ethan's stubbornness. He and Cole chose to stay in this world. With his abilities, Ethan could have thrived anywhere, but he had one fatal flaw: he was undocumented. Without anyone watching, he could scrape by, but under scrutiny, finding respectable work was nearly impossible. The next time I saw him was when I went out with Preston and Mason to watch a movie. While Preston went to buy milk tea, I waited and waited, but he didn't return. Taking Mason with me, I went downstairs to the shop and found Preston in a store uniform, pinning Ethan to the floor and beating him hard. People all around were shrieking. I panicked, rushing over to pull Preston away. "What the hell are you doing?" Ethan had lost all control. Even as I grabbed him, he lashed out, kicking Preston in the stomach and nearly striking Mason, who had thrown himself over Preston's body. "You think you're tough?" Ethan roared. "Didn't you hit me hard enough just now?" I'd had enough. My hand flew, slapping Ethan across the face. Stunned, he staggered back. At my current height of 179, my bones were solid, not delicate. That slap swelled his cheek instantly. He pressed a trembling hand to his face, looking as if he might shatter. "Do you even know what kind of man he is? No matter where I try to work, he ruins it. I've been forced to scrub floors and wash dishes. Just now, he provoked me first. He hit me in the gut. You didn't see that. You only saw him throw himself on the ground, pretending to be weak. Do you know how exhausted I am? Do you know who I'm doing all this for?" I froze. My gaze dropped to Preston, who was clutching his chest, pale but steady. He whispered, "It's my fault. I shouldn't have told him we were eating out and seeing a movie. I just couldn't help it. I was too happy. I wanted to show off that you'd given me a chance." A chance. Since when had that been decided? Still, it wasn't entirely wrong. Ethan's fury only grew darker, his eyes burning. Around us, whispers rippled through the crowd. Cheating scandal, husband snatching, snatches of gossip floated past, and countless curious or pitying eyes turned my way. It felt as if I were back at the Carter estate again. Cole squeezed his way through the crowd, and the moment he saw the chaos, his first instinct was to blame me. He lunged forward, striking at me. "You piece of trash, you ruined my dad, you." Before he could finish, Mason stood up, took a deep breath, planted his fists on his hips, and roared with all the force in his small lungs. "You people never quit, do you? Enough already." Then came a torrent of dialect, words I couldn't quite grasp but that I understood were meant to defend me. The outburst was full of explosive phrases: damn turtle, useless junk, hammerhead, rotten bastard, strung together for 3 minutes without repeating once. I, who had lived over 20 years abiding by rules and decorum, stood in utter shock. The onlookers scattered under Mason's barrage. His tiny figure radiated the same intimidating authority as the stammering old woman from my childhood who used to terrify the whole street. I couldn't help but feel awe. He finished with a final declaration: I'm Mason. No one bullies me or my uncle. Preston and I clapped for him, cheering from the ground where Preston was still recovering. Ethan still had hold of my arm. I thought a moment, then pulled free. Sorry, I said evenly. My friend hit you. I'll bring him to apologize. How much compensation do you want? Will you settle this? Ethan stared at me in disbelief. You'll bring him to apologize to me? I nodded. He opened and closed his mouth several times until finally he clenched his fist. Grinding out, I want you to take me to the hospital. I opened my wallet and handed him all the cash inside. This is all I have. You don't seem to have any visible injuries. It should be enough. His voice trembled. So you still won't come with me? I have more important things to do. I'm going to watch a movie. He clutched the bills tight but said nothing more. He looked frail as he rose, leaning slightly toward me for balance. I steadied him, then helped Mason onto the escalator. I glared at Preston. What was that for? He looked sheepish. I wanted to vent your anger, and I was afraid you'd go soft on your ex-husband. I smacked the back of his head. After the movie, I came out and found Ethan and Cole sitting on a bench outside the theater. Ethan looked exhausted, Cole curled up asleep on his lap, looking so small. For the first time it struck me that father and son, who had always lived pampered lives, had now reached their breaking point. When Ethan spotted me, he gently patted Cole awake and stood. Preston immediately stepped in front of me protectively. Ethan didn't move forward. His expression calm enough. We just want to apologize, he said. I touched my face, turned toward Preston, and after a pause he pulled Mason aside, giving me space. I'm sorry, Ethan said. He nudged Cole. Cole sniffled, his nose red, and whispered too, Dad, I'm sorry. At last I had their apology. And yet instead of relief I felt nothing at all. Back in the Carter estate I had often imagined the day they would repent. Thought that if they ever knelt before me in tears my bitterness and humiliation would ease. But once I returned to the real world, once I had healthy connections again, I quickly found my balance. I had swept away those emotions that only consumed me. Still they went on. Cole hung his head, tugging at his shirt hem. I treated you badly. I should have stood by you, protected you. Ethan added his own admission. I didn't understand my own heart. I did so many things that hurt you. I know, I said. Now go. The Carter father and son froze in shock. They were people who had always been indulged, supremely confident in relationships, certain that so long as they turned back everything could be mended. They hadn't expected that lowering themselves with an apology would bring no forgiveness. Cole's tears fell in a rush. You don't want me anymore, you'd rather have Mason. Clearly I'm your real son. Cole shouted behind me. Ethan Carter saw me turn to leave and grabbed my arm. Wendy, he said, voice trembling, after you became a vegetable I didn't sleep properly for a single day. With Leo it was just regret. He begged me to give him a permanent mark, said he wanted to help me move on. But every time I closed my eyes I felt you beside me. I love you. I've loved you for so long. I was too arrogant, too foolish, and that's how I lost you. Heaven gave me this chance to get close to you again. I really can't live without you. Please forgive me. But I don't love you, I said. The words choked him silent. His expression froze like a goose with its neck caught, the rest of his plea stuck in his throat. That year when I walked into the wrong room, it was during a trip. 8 of us traveled together. I was the only one from the orphanage. Ethan had said that scrubbing floors and washing dishes was hard work, but I had been doing that since I was 14. To afford a single box of decent paints, I had to wash 300 dishes or wear a mascot costume on the street for an entire afternoon. I painted tens of thousands of pictures just to earn my way into art school, just to have the same opportunities as everyone else. Of course I dreamed of showing my work to the world, but after that day everything disappeared. I had offended the Leos, my reputation ruined, no one dared buy my paintings. I was left penniless. Living in a basement. Ethan gave me a permanent mark and I didn't even know I was pregnant. That period was hell. I spent nights with blinding headaches, vomiting, unable to sleep. My glands burned as if red-hot wires were threaded through them. I thought it was just pheromone deprivation and endured it, refusing to go to Ethan until I collapsed and woke in the hospital. Only when Grandma Carter came did I learn I was carrying Cole. I had no choice. No one ever gave me a choice. You said I owed Leo. What exactly did I owe him? Was it because he caught me glancing at you twice, bribed the receptionist so I'd walk into the wrong room, deliberately forgot your heat cycle just to watch me suffer? He arrived late and all of it unfolded because of him. Ethan, you can't make me believe you never discovered that. And even if I step back and give you the benefit of the doubt, were you innocent? You're the one who marked me, the one who made me pregnant, the one who betrayed Leo. Why must I love you? For the clean, efficient way you carved out my glands. My words left Ethan staggering, nearly unable to stand. He muttered, broken and desperate, I know I wronged you, please give me a chance, let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I laughed coldly. I don't need that. Then what do you need? What I needed I already got the day you cut out my glands. I leaned closer, whispered into his ear. Ethan Carter, reverse marking, hurts, doesn't it? The color drained from his face. I knew Ethan's body better than my own. After years entangled with me, he thought I was the one bound by severe pheromone dependency. What he never realized was that his dependency on me was even deeper. By the second year at the Carter estate, I had already discovered he'd been reverse-marked by me. He believed he had stayed pure, untouched by other Omegas, but in truth, it was because he simply couldn't. The reason he so easily agreed to let Leo strip out my glands must have been because he thought Leo would be the exception. After all, even if the transplant failed, an alpha could always mark another Omega. To him, it was nothing significant. But it was too cruel. He could no longer mark anyone but me. Ethan Carter stammered, You knew all along. Why didn't you tell me? I stepped back. Why should I tell you? That kind of pain, the confusion. The madness of wanting but never having. The rage and despair. Why should I be the only one to bear it? Yes, there was no one else who could satisfy him anymore. Deprived of pheromones, he would descend into chaos. He'd feel as if 10,000 ants were crawling through his skull, suffer headaches, vomiting, sleepless nights, violent urges to tear everything apart until he became a lunatic. Ethan erupted, his pheromones surging uncontrollably. The scent of citrus flooding outward with terrifying aggression. What should only have been perceived by alphas and omegas spilled into the air like hundreds of shattered perfume bottles, so strong even pedestrians on the next street turned to sniff. Cole collapsed to his knees under the weight of it, tears and snot streaming as he clutched Ethan's pant leg and sobbed, Dad. Ethan remained unmoved, but his pheromones no longer affected me. I stood straight-backed in that suffocating, acrid scent that had imprisoned me half my life and smiled brilliantly. Ethan, I said, you should get your glands removed, end it once and for all. Without them you won't have to suffer anymore. Preston and Mason ran toward me just as Ethan lunged. I heard the system's metallic voice blare in my head, over-intervention detected, over-intervention detected. The moment his fingers almost touched me, Ethan vanished into thin air before my eyes. Preston and Mason skidded to a halt stunned, then rushed to my side. Are you okay? Preston asked while Mason gasped, Whoa, Wendy, was that magic? Now I really believe you went to another world. Citrus scent slowly dissipated. I walked over to Cole, still half kneeling on the ground, and helped him up. He trembled, wanting to throw himself into my arms, but I pressed his shoulders firmly. Cole, I said, calling his name. He looked up uneasily, unable to stop sobbing. I once thought you were a gift from heaven, I told him. But now I know the truth. Look at you, you're growing more and more like Ethan. The coldness in your eyes, the shadows at the corners. The gloom spreading like thorny vines in places the sun can't reach. I used to embrace you so sincerely, even as you stabbed me full of wounds. You are my flesh and blood, but also the sickness that grew inside me. Only by parting from you can I truly live. There are fathers and sons in this world who aren't bound by love but by karmic debt. I gave birth to you because I was selfish. You were born and it became a debt I owed you. Now that debt is paid. I set you free. I've already found the child I want. I hope you too can find the father you need. The system took Cole away. It apologized, admitting I should never have borne the cost of its error, and promised that the Carter father and son would never again disturb my life. After that, preparations for my solo exhibition began. Seeing visitors gather before my paintings, discussing them with approval. My chest filled with a satisfaction I had hungered for across 2 lifetimes. At last I had reclaimed everything that was mine. When the exhibition ended, Preston drove Mason and me to the seaside. I recognized the car's emblem. Back when Ethan had accused him of obstructing everything, I had suspected Preston was wealthier than I thought. Now he revealed his true self as I had guessed. At the shore he showed me fireworks blossoming across the entire beach. Beneath that dazzling light, he said, that day when you told me you'd found the child you wanted, Mason and I were both so happy. Preston stood beside me, his voice soft and steady. At first, I thought, if you wanted to go back, I'd just stay your friend. Even if I couldn't help myself, as long as you were happy, that was enough. I frowned, clearly not agreeing. He noticed right away and quickly caught my hand. But now I understand, you can't place your happiness on someone else. Wendy, would you let me be part of your happiness? How could someone be both gentle as a saint and wag his tail like a puppy at the same time? What else could I do but say yes? Half a year later, Preston and I went abroad to get our marriage license. The happiest one was Mason. He ran around the room twice holding the certificate high, grinning ear to ear. My solo exhibition had made my name. Now the money from a single painting was enough to buy a new home. One of my paintings even hung in Preston's office. As it turned out, his true identity was the CEO of a listed company, but that hardly mattered anymore. The system appeared 2 more times afterward, only to relay the Carter's ending in the original world. Ethan Carter could have avoided mental collapse if he had chosen to remove his glands, but fearing he'd never stand tall in elite circles again, he instead ripped out Leo's glands and had mine transplanted. My glands, having been preserved in the hospital for months, had lost vitality. The transplant triggered severe rejection, leaving Leo ruined as well. The Leo family struck back, pressing charges of kidnapping and bodily harm against Ethan, sending him to prison with a 10-year sentence. Grandma Carter, enraged to the point of heart failure, was confined to a nursing home. The Carter family fell into decline. Cole was sent off to distant relatives and word was his life was miserable, but none of that had anything to do with me anymore. The story was over.